Voyage au Congo captures André Gide's journey to French Equatorial Africa in 1925, and it is believed to be the first French ethnographic film shot in Africa. The footage shows Gide and his team interacting with the local people, as well as scenes of the African landscape, wildlife and customs. The film has a raw and authentic feel, thanks to the use of a handheld camera. The footage is often shaky and blurry, which gives the film a documentary-like quality. This style of filmmaking was ahead of its time and would go on to influence future filmmakers. The making of Voyage au Congo was a collaborative effort between André Gide and Marc Allégret. Gide was a renowned French writer and intellectual who was interested in exploring the colonial system and its impact on the African people. Allégret was a young filmmaker who had recently completed his studies in film and was eager to explore new ways of capturing reality on camera. Gide and Allégret set out on their journey to French Equatorial Africa in 1925, armed with a handheld camera and a desire to capture the reality of colonial life. They traveled through the Congo, Gabon, and Cameroon, filming as they went. The footage they captured was often shaky and blurry, but it offered a unique perspective on African life. The making of the film was not without its challenges. The film was shot using a handheld camera, which made it difficult to capture stable and clear footage. The filmmakers also had to contend with harsh filming conditions, including extreme heat, rough terrain and unpredictable wildlife. Some of the footage in the film depicts scenes of colonial violence and exploitation, including African porters carrying heavy loads and colonial officials whipping African workers. This sparked controversy and criticism, as many people felt that the filmmakers were complicit in the exploitation of African people. Gide and Allégret were French intellectuals who had little understanding of African culture and customs. This led to some cultural misunderstandings and misrepresentations in the film, which were criticized by some African and post-colonial scholars. The colonial authorities were not happy with the film's portrayal of colonial life in Africa. They saw the film as a threat to their authority and attempted to suppress its release. This led to a long legal battle, which ultimately prevented the film from being released in its original form. Despite these challenges and controversies, Voyage au Congo remains an important historical document that provides a unique perspective on French colonialism in Africa. The film captures a moment in time and offers a glimpse into the lives of the people who were affected by colonial rule. It continues to be studied and analyzed by scholars of African and post-colonial studies. Unfortunately, the film was never completed or released in its original form, and much of the original footage has been lost. However, the surviving footage has been pieced together in a montage that offers a unique perspective on African life in the 1920s. Despite the controversies surrounding the film, Voyage au Congo has received critical acclaim from scholars of African and post-colonial studies. The film is seen as an important historical document that provides a unique perspective on French colonialism in Africa. It is praised for its raw and authentic portrayal of African life and its challenges to the prevailing colonial narratives of the time. The fact that the original film was never released means that its audience has been limited to scholars and researchers. However, the availability of the surviving footage and the montage has allowed the film to reach a wider audience in recent years. Both André Gide and Marc Allégret have written extensively about their experiences making Voyage au Congo and their thoughts on the film. André Gide was a French writer and intellectual who lived from 1869 to 1951. He was one of the most prominent literary figures of the 20th century, and his work spanned a wide range of genres, including novels, essays and plays. Gide was deeply committed to social justice and human rights, and his writings often explored themes of morality, individual freedom, and the nature of power. He was a vocal critic of colonialism and imperialism, and his experiences traveling to Africa informed much of his later work. In addition to his literary pursuits, Gide was also involved in politics and social activism. He was a member of the French resistance during World War II and was a vocal advocate for LGBTQ rights, even at a time when such advocacy was extremely controversial. Gide's involvement in the Voyage au Congo film was a reflection of his interest in exploring the complexities of colonialism and the impact of European power on African societies. His contributions to the film were primarily in the form of his writing, which reflected his observations and insights from his travels in Africa. In his book Voyage au Congo, Gide reflects on his motivations for making the film and his impressions of African life. He writes about the difficulties of capturing reality on film and the challenges of navigating the complex social and political landscape of colonial Africa. Gide also discusses his hopes for the film to challenge prevailing colonial narratives and to offer a more authentic portrayal of African life. Marc Allégret was a French filmmaker who lived from 1900 to 1973. He was a key figure in the French film industry in the 1920s and 1930s, and he worked on a number of notable films during this time. Allégret began his career as a film critic, and he later worked as an assistant director to Jean Renoir. He then went on to direct his own films, which were known for their innovative style and technical prowess. Allégret's involvement in the Voyage au Congo film was a significant moment in his career, as it allowed him to experiment with new forms of filmmaking and to push the boundaries of documentary filmmaking. He was responsible for much of the filming and editing of the footage, and his technical skills and creativity were critical to the success of the project. Allégret was also known for his social and political activism, and he was deeply committed to human rights and social justice. His experiences working on Voyage au Congo helped to shape his views on colonialism and imperialism, and he went on to explore these themes in much of his later work. Allégret, who was primarily responsible for filming and editing the footage, wrote about his experiences making the film in his book Carnet de Route. He discusses the technical challenges of filming in the African wilderness and the difficulties of working with a handheld camera. Allégret also reflects on the ethical issues raised by the film's depiction of colonial violence and exploitation. Both Gide and Allégret emphasized the collaborative nature of their work on the film. They worked closely together to capture the reality of African life and to challenge prevailing colonial narratives. They also interacted with local people and tried to understand their customs and traditions, which informed the footage they captured. In his book Black Skin, White Masks, Frantz Fanon, the prominent anti-colonialist writer and philosopher, wrote about the impact that Voyage au Congo had on his own thinking about colonialism and racism. Fanon described the film as brutal and degrading, and he argued that it perpetuated harmful stereotypes and promoted colonial violence against African people. The film contained a number of notable scenes and moments that provide insight into African life and French colonialism in the early 20th century. The film includes footage of various African animals, such as elephants, giraffes, and zebras. These scenes showcase the diversity and beauty of African wildlife. The filmmakers also captured footage of African people going about their daily lives, such as fishing, farming, and dancing. These scenes offer a glimpse into the social and cultural practices of African communities. The film also includes scenes of French colonial officials and their interactions with African people. These scenes depict the power dynamics and hierarchies of colonialism, with colonial officials exerting control over African workers. There are also scenes that show African porters carrying heavy loads and working in harsh conditions. These scenes highlight the exploitation and mistreatment of African labor under colonial rule. The film also features footage of the African landscape, including rivers, mountains and forests. These scenes showcase the natural beauty and resources of Africa. Perhaps the most controversial scenes in the film depict colonial violence and exploitation. There are scenes of African workers being whipped by colonial officials, as well as scenes of African people being forced to carry heavy loads. These scenes raise ethical questions about the filmmaker's role in perpetuating colonial violence and the impact of colonialism on African people. Overall, Voyage au Congo is an important historical document that provides a unique perspective on French colonialism in Africa. The film captures a moment in time and offers a glimpse into the lives of the people who were affected by colonial rule.